When the sun goes down, you are going to flip a switch. Light will flood the room and you won't think twice about it. You'll scroll, you'll stream, you'll stay up 2 hours past when your body wanted to stop. And tomorrow, you'll wonder why you're exhausted. But here's the thing. For 99.9% of human history, that switch didn't exist. When the sun set, the world went dark. And what your ancestors did inside that darkness is one of the most misunderstood chapters of the entire human story. Scientists, historians, and sleep researchers have spent decades trying to reconstruct it. What they found did not match what anyone expected. It did not look like unconsciousness. It did not look like wasted time. It looked, in many ways, like the most human part of the day. Start with the basic assumption most people carry, that ancient humans went to sleep when it got dark and woke up when it got light. It feels obvious. It feels logical. It is also, according to the evidence, largely wrong. In 2015, sleep researcher Jerome Siegel and his team at UCLA published a landmark study in Current Biology. They tracked the sleep patterns of 3 pre-industrial hunter-gatherer groups, the Hadza of Tanzania, the San of Namibia, and the Tsimane of Bolivia. People who live today without electricity, without alarm clocks, without artificial light. If any modern humans reflected the ancestral pattern, it was them. What Siegel found was unexpected. These groups did not go to sleep at sunset. On average, they stayed awake for roughly 3 hours after dark. They didn't wake at sunrise either. They typically rose about an hour after dawn. Their total sleep time averaged just 6 to 7 hours, less than most sleep scientists had assumed for pre-modern humans. That 3-hour window after sunset was not idle. It was not wasted. It was, by all accounts, the social core of the day. Think about what daytime looked like for your ancestors. Movement, foraging, vigilance, the cognitive load of tracking prey, reading terrain, managing group relationships under the open sky. The body and mind were engines running hot. When darkness fell, that engine didn't stop. It shifted. Around the fire, the social world opened up in a different way. Anthropologist Polly Wiessner spent decades studying the Jew/Hwanzi San people of Namibia and Botswana. In 2014, she published a study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences that mapped what people actually talked about during daytime hours versus nighttime hours around the fire. The difference was striking. Daytime conversations were dominated by practical matters, complaints, economic concerns, criticism of others' behavior. But at night, around firelight, the content shifted almost entirely to storytelling. Myths, accounts of distant places, tales of heroes, tricksters, ancestors, and impossible creatures. Wiessner argued that this was not entertainment in the trivial sense. These stories were doing something structural. They were transmitting values, mapping social relationships, teaching the young what the world was and what it demanded of them. The fire at night was humanity's first classroom, its first theater, its first temple, and the fire itself mattered in ways that go deeper than warmth. Archaeologist Dennis Sandgath, who has studied ancient hearths extensively, argues that controlled fire use by hominins stretches back at least 300,000 years, and possibly much longer. Fire didn't just keep predators away, it restructured time. It pushed the boundary of day forward into darkness, creating a new zone of human experience that had never existed before in the animal world. No other species has a social nighttime. Your ancestors invented one. Inside that zone, something else was happening. Something quieter. Something the archaeological record almost can't capture. People were doing nothing. Not nothing in the way we mean it today. Staring at a phone, half watching something, technically present, but cognitively absent. Nothing in the original sense. Resting. Sitting with other bodies in the dark. Listening to the fire. Feeling the warmth. Breathing together. Your own brain craves this. And in modern life, it almost never gets it. Then came the sleep itself. But here is the part that will unsettle every assumption you have about what a good night of sleep is supposed to look like. Historian A. Roger Ekirch spent over a decade researching the history of night in pre-modern Europe and published his findings in 2001 in the American Historical Review. What he discovered in diaries, court records, medical texts, and literary references was a consistent pattern that vanished so completely that we forgot it ever existed. Before artificial light, people in pre-modern societies did not sleep in one continuous block. They slept in two. The first sleep began shortly after dark and lasted roughly 4 hours. Then people woke. Not because something disturbed them, not because they had a disorder. They simply woke, naturally, in the middle of the night. And for an hour or two, they existed in a state that Ekirch describes as unlike any other in their daily lives. People prayed, they had sex, they talked with partners or household members. They thought, slowly, without agenda. Some got up to relieve themselves, or to check on animals, or to visit neighbors. Then they returned to sleep for what was called the second sleep, which lasted until morning. This was the normal rhythm of human night for most of recorded history. It only disappeared in the 18th and 19th centuries as artificial light extended the evening and industrial schedules demanded a consolidated block of unconsciousness to match the factory clock. The wakeful interlude between the two sleeps was described in old texts as a uniquely reflective time, a liminal space between the worlds of waking and dreaming where the mind was calm, ideas came freely, and the emotions of the day could be processed without distraction. You may have experienced a ghost of this. You wake at 2 or 3 in the morning, lie in the dark, think thoughts you don't normally think, and then drift back to sleep. Modern medicine often labels this insomnia. Ancient humans called it Tuesday. Sleep psychologist Greg Jacobs at the University of Massachusetts has pointed out that the anxiety modern people feel during middle-of-the-night waking, the sense that something is wrong, that they are failing at sleep, is a cultural artifact. It is a mismatch between a body running an ancient program and a mind that has been taught to expect something the human species never actually did. So picture the full arc of an ancestral night. The sun sets, the fire comes up, the group gathers. Children listen to stories they will carry for the rest of their lives. Adults talk, not about tomorrow's task list, but about the nature of things, about what matters, about who they are and where they came from. The emotional bonds of the group are woven tighter in the dark than they ever were in daylight. Then, one by one, people drift into the first sleep. The fire burns low. The world around the camp breathes. Somewhere in the deep hours, people surface. The camp is quiet but not entirely still. A couple speaks in low tones. Someone sits up and watches the stars. The body is calm, the mind is open, and the boundary between thinking and dreaming is thin. Then the second sleep takes them back down until dawn. This is what night actually was. Not a void between days, not lost time, not a problem to be solved by an alarm clock and a productivity app. Night was a space, a social space, a reflective space, a neurological space, a space that your body still knows how to inhabit, even if your schedule has never allowed it. The modern world took all of this and compressed it. It turned the storytelling into content. It turned the firelight into blue light. It turned the two-sleep rhythm into one block of unconsciousness wedged between an overstimulated evening and a violent alarm. It told you that anything less than 8 solid hours is failure, while simultaneously building an entire civilization that makes 8 solid hours nearly impossible to achieve. Your exhaustion is not a personal failing. It is a structural mismatch between a body shaped over hundreds of thousands of years and a world built in the last 200. Tonight, when the sun goes down, you are going to flip a switch. But somewhere inside that act, somewhere in the body that stiffens slightly when the light is too bright, in the mind that wanders when you try to make it focus, in the pull you feel toward other people in the evening hours, in the way you wake at 3 a.m. and think thoughts you can't think anywhere else, your ancestors are still there. They are waiting, as they always did, around a fire that no longer burns.